man in the sleeper. I've been driving long haul for almost 15 years. You learn fast that the road at night has its own rules. Rest areas feel different after midnight, too quiet, like the world is holding its breath. That night, I was hauling frozen meat through Nebraska, already 12 hours deep and running on fumes. My logbook said I needed to shut down, so when I saw a nearly empty rest stop off I-80, I took it. Only 3 other rigs were parked, engines ticking as they cooled. No cars. No people. Just wind and insects. I parked near the far edge, killed the engine, and climbed into the sleeper. I locked the doors out of habit. Ate a cold sandwich. Scrolled my phone. Around 1:20 a.m., I heard footsteps outside, slow, dragging, like someone tired or hurt. That wasn't unusual, but what got me was how close they sounded. The steps stopped right beside my cab. I held my breath, listening. A shadow passed across the curtain. Someone was standing there, inches from me. I waited for a knock. It never came. After a full minute, the steps moved away. I told myself it was another driver heading to the bathroom and tried to sleep. 10 minutes later, I heard it again. This time, the steps circled the truck. I cracked the curtain just enough to peek out. Nobody was there, but the passenger side mirror was folded in. I never do that. My stomach dropped. I knew I'd left it extended. I always check mirrors before shutdown. I sat frozen, listening hard. Then I heard a sound I'll never forget. A soft exhale. Not outside. Inside the cab. Right behind the curtain. The sleeper creaked slightly, like weight shifting on the mattress. I didn't move. My heart slammed so hard I thought I'd pass out. Then a whisper, low and dry. Don't turn around. Every instinct screamed to grab my knife, but my arm wouldn't work. I stared at the curtain, waiting for it to move. It didn't. The air smelled wrong, like sweat and metal. I slowly reached for my phone, trying not to make a sound. The screen lit up the cab just a little. That's when I saw something reflected in it. A face. Not mine. Pale. Too close. Eyes wide open, unblinking, staring straight at me from the darkness behind my seat. I screamed and spun around in one motion, swinging blind. There was nobody there. The sleeper was empty. I scrambled into the driver's seat and locked myself in, hands shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. I checked the sleeper. Nothing disturbed. No footprints. No open doors. I called 911 anyway. While I waited, I noticed something on the dashboard. My logbook. Open. A page I hadn't written on yet had a single line scratched into it, deep enough to tear the paper. I was already riding with you. State troopers arrived 10 minutes later. They searched the truck, the surrounding woods, even checked under the chassis. Found nothing. One officer told me maybe I'd had a night terror. I almost believed him, until morning. At sunrise, another driver knocked on my door. He looked pale. He asked if I was the guy parked next to him overnight. I said yes. He swallowed hard and told me he'd woken around 2 a.m. to see someone climbing down from my truck. A man with no shoes, no shirt, skin filthy like he'd been living in dirt. The man looked straight at him and smiled, too wide, and said, he didn't feel me breathing. Then he walked into the tall grass behind the rest stop. They never found him. I quit long haul 3 weeks later. I didn't sleep after that night. Even after the sun came up, even with other trucks roaring out of the rest stop, I felt watched. The troopers took my statement again before letting me leave. They were polite, but distant, like they'd heard this kind of thing before and didn't want to say it out loud. One of them finally asked me a question that made my blood run cold. Did you check your sleeper before you parked? I told him yes. I always do. He nodded slowly and said nothing more. I pulled back onto the highway, mirrors scanning non-stop. About 30 miles out, I stopped for fuel. While the tank filled, I inspected the truck inch by inch. That's when I noticed it. Scratches on the rear fairing, low and uneven, like fingernails. Not animal marks. Human. The mechanic on duty told me something worse. He said drivers sometimes find stowaways hiding under trailers or climbing into sleepers at night. Drifters. Addicts. People running from something. But this one, he said quietly. This one got inside without forcing anything. I didn't tell him about the whisper. 2 days later, my dispatcher called. The rest stop had been shut down temporarily. I asked why. He hesitated, then said a body had been found in the grass behind it. Male. Late 40s. No shoes. No shirt. Cause of death. Exposure. Estimated time of death. 3 days before the night I parked there. I laughed at first. A sharp, broken sound. Told him that wasn't possible. He went quiet. They found fibers in his lungs, he said. Truck upholstery. I pulled over and threw up on the shoulder. I asked the police for details. They didn't want to give them. I pushed. Finally, a detective told me the man had been reported missing weeks earlier. Former long-haul driver. Severe insomnia. Mental break. He believed trucks were safer than buildings, that he could ride inside them without being seen. They'd found fragments of foam in his throat, same material used in sleeper mattresses. The detective ended the call with one sentence I still hear at night. "We don't think you were the first driver." That night, I slept with every light on. 3 weeks later, after I quit, I sold the truck, cleared everything out myself. On the last day, while pulling the mattress, I found something wedged deep behind the sleeper wall. A piece of folded paper, yellowed with sweat. It was a log page. Not mine. The handwriting shook, desperate. It read, "If you stay still long enough, they stop feeling you." There were tally marks underneath. Dozens of them. I burned the mattress that same day. I still can't sleep in silence. I thought quitting trucking would end it. I sold the rig, burned the mattress, moved apartments, changed my routine. For a while, it worked. I slept again, light sleep, but real sleep. Months passed. Then one night, I woke up to the sound of breathing. Slow, careful, measured. Not mine. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, telling myself it was just memory, just trauma replaying itself. Then I felt it, warm air against my neck. Someone was inches away, close enough that if I turned my head, our faces would touch. A voice whispered, softer than before, "You were easier than the others." I rolled out of bed screaming and hit the light. Nothing. Door locked. Windows closed. No sign of anyone. But the smell was there again, that mix of sweat, metal, and old fabric. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I called the detective from Nebraska. Told him everything. He went quiet for a long time. Then he told me something they'd never put in the report. The man found behind the rest stop? He'd been dead for days, yes, but the injuries inside his lungs were fresh, as if he'd been breathing upholstery after death. "That's impossible," I said. The detective sighed. "We know." Things escalated fast after that. Objects moved when I wasn't looking. Closet door open. Couch cushion indented like someone had been sitting there. I installed cameras. Motion alerts triggered at night, but the footage showed nothing, just subtle depressions forming, air shifting like heat waves. One clip caught audio, though. At 3:11 a.m., the MIC recorded breathing. Right next to the camera. Slow. Familiar. I noticed something worse. My bedsheets had begun tearing in tiny spots, like fingernails digging in while gripping fabric. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom. Started dozing on the couch with the lights on. It didn't care where I slept. The final confirmation came a year later. I was watching a late-night documentary about missing persons. One case froze me solid. A former trucker. Same age range. Same breakdown. The show mentioned a pattern. Drivers reporting sensations of being watched, pressure on their mattresses, breathing they couldn't explain. The expert called it shared delusional intrusion. But then a retired state trooper spoke. Off the record. He said some rest stops were quietly rebuilt every few decades. New asphalt. New layout. Same reason. Too many men vanished, he said. Too many drivers swore someone rode with them. I turned the TV off. Last week, I woke up to weight settling beside me again. This time, I didn't move. I remembered the note. If you stay still long enough, they stop feeling you. The breathing paused. Then something brushed my arm, curious, almost disappointed. A whisper came, closer than ever. "You don't drive anymore." I felt the weight lift. The room went silent. I haven't felt it since. But tonight, I heard a semi-brake outside my apartment. And I'm scared it's found a new ride. The desert at night doesn't feel empty. It feels alert. Like it's watching you cross it. I was hauling electronics from Phoenix to El Pozo, running late, pushing harder than I should have. No moon. Just black sky and miles of nothing but heat-soaked asphalt. Around 2 a.m., I noticed headlights behind me. Far back. Steady. I check my mirrors again 10 minutes later. Same distance. That wasn't normal. Most drivers pass or fall behind. These lights didn't. They stayed locked to me, perfectly centered, like they were tied to my trailer. I sped up. So did they. After 40 minutes, my radio crackled. No call sign. Just breathing. Dry, rasping, like someone inhaling dust. I tapped the MIC, asked if anyone was on channel 19. No response. The breathing stopped. The headlights blinked once, off, then on again. My hands tightened on the wheel. I told myself it was a prank, some bored driver messing around. But then the headlights drifted, not to pass me, not to back off, but to line up exactly with my trailer doors. That's when my trailer brakes engaged by themselves. I almost jackknifed. I pulled onto the shoulder, heart pounding, hazards flashing. The headlights stopped behind me. Engine still running. No door opened. No movement. Just idling. I grabbed my flashlight and knife and stepped down onto the gravel. The air smelled burned, like overheated metal. I shouted, asked if they needed help. Nothing. I walked toward the lights. That's when I realized there was no cab. No truck. Just headlights. Floating at trailer height. Perfectly spaced. As if something invisible was wearing them. They flicked off. The desert went completely dark. My radio exploded with static. Then a voice, too calm, too close, said, "Don't stop again." The headlights snapped back on, now inches from my trailer doors. I ran back into the cab, slammed the door, and peeled onto the highway. I didn't look in the mirrors again. I drove for 3 straight hours without blinking, fuel gauge screaming empty. When I finally hit a truck stop near Lordsburg, the headlights were gone. I sat there shaking until dawn. At sunrise, I walked to the back of my trailer. Both doors were warm to the touch. From the inside. I reported it. Dispatch laughed it off. Desert fatigue, they said. 2 weeks later, another driver on the same route disappeared. His truck was found abandoned on the shoulder. Engine running. Trailer empty. No footprints. No signs of a struggle. Just 2 blackened scorch marks on the asphalt behind the trailer, perfectly spaced. Same width as headlights. I don't drive that route anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I see lights in my rearview mirror. Keeping perfect distance. I tried to forget that night. Switched routes. Took shorter hauls. Day driving only. For a while, it worked. Then dispatch offered a bonus run. High pay, short deadline. Same desert corridor, different highway. I told myself roads don't remember. I was wrong. Around midnight, the CB crackled again. Static first. Then a familiar breathing sound. Slow. Patient. I shut the radio off completely. 10 minutes later, my dashboard lights dimmed on their own. The GPS froze, then rerouted me onto a state road I hadn't selected. No cell service. No exits. Just desert swallowing the headlights. And then, behind me, 2 lights appeared. Perfectly spaced. I didn't slow down this time. I didn't speed up either. I held a steady 65, watching the mirrors like they were ticking bombs. The lights stayed locked in place. Not gaining. Not falling back. My trailer camera flickered on by itself. The screen showed the inside of my trailer. Empty. Then the image warped. A shape passed through the frame. Tall, thin, moving sideways like it didn't understand gravity. The lights behind me brightened, burning white hot. My trailer temperature alarm screamed. Electronics don't heat like that. But the gauge climbed anyway. Then something knocked from inside the trailer. Once. Twice. Like a signal. I hit the brakes hard. The knocking stopped. The lights behind me went dark instantly, like someone flipped a switch. Silence flooded the cab. I sat there shaking, convinced if I opened the door I'd see nothing, and that would be worse. When I finally stepped out, heat rolled off the trailer like it had been sitting in the sun all day. I pressed my ear to the metal. No sound. But etched into the dust on the doors were 2 perfect handprints. Burned clean through the grime. Long fingers. Too long. I wiped one away. The metal underneath was scorched black. I didn't touch the other. I limped into a way station just before dawn. The officer took one look at my face and waved me into inspection. He didn't laugh when I told him what happened. He went quiet. Then he asked, "Did they stay behind you the whole time?" I nodded. He exhaled slowly. "They don't like being passed," he said. "And they don't like being followed." I asked him what they were. He handed me a folded incident report from years ago. Different driver. Same route. Same lights. Same heat damage. Outcome listed as unrecovered. I quit that morning. I didn't drive for 6 months after quitting. I stayed close to home, avoided highways at night, convinced myself distance meant safety. Then my brother broke down outside Yuma. Midnight. Desert stretch with no service. He wasn't a trucker, just unlucky. I told myself this was different. Smaller vehicle. Short drive. I grabbed my keys. Halfway there, my phone lost signal. The road narrowed. No exits. No reflectors. The desert felt wrong again. Too quiet, like sound had been swallowed. Then my dashboard dimmed. I laughed nervously. Same trick. Same road memory. In my rearview mirror, 2 lights appeared. Perfectly spaced. I pulled over immediately. I wouldn't play their game again. The lights stopped behind me. No engine sound. No footsteps. I stayed in the car, windows up, doors locked. The air pressure changed, ears popping like altitude shift. Then the lights rose. Not closer. Higher. Floating above the road, revealing the truth beneath them. The ground rippled, like heat mirage but solid. Shapes moved under the asphalt, long, slow forms sliding between the miles. I understood then. They weren't vehicles. They weren't following me. They were using the road. The lights dipped, waiting. My radio turned on by itself. No static this time. Clear. Calm. You stop, you stay, the voice said. Images flooded my head. Empty trucks, open doors, engines idling forever. Men who stepped out and never stepped back in. The heat. The handprints. The trailer doors warm from the inside. I realized the truth. They don't hunt drivers. They replace the road around them until you belong to it. I floored the gas. The car screamed. The light surged forward, not chasing, aligning, matching my speed perfectly. Then my brother's name came through the radio. I swerved off the highway. Gravel. Sand. Anything but asphalt. The moment my tires left the road, the lights vanished. Instantly. Silence returned. I skidded to a stop, heart pounding. The desert was just desert again. Flat. Dead. Honest. I found my brother an hour later. He was shaken but alive. His car had died right where the pavement cracked into dirt. He told me something before we left. He said he'd seen headlights coming, but they disappeared the moment he stepped off the road to wave me down. I never touch highways at night now. Last thing. Last warning. A retired engineer contacted me after hearing my report. He said some desert highways are rerouted quietly every few decades. Not for erosion. Not for safety. For containment, he said. When roads run straight too long, uninterrupted, something notices. Something old that learned humans move faster when guided by lines. He ended the call with this. If you ever see lights keeping perfect distance, don't stop, don't pass, and whatever you do, don't stay on the road. The truck stop that wasn't on the map. Blizzards don't feel scary at first. They feel inconvenient. I was hauling paper rolls through North Dakota when the snow started coming down sideways, thick enough to erase the road 10 feet ahead. Dispatch told me to shut down at the next stop and wait it out. The sign appeared suddenly. Truck stop 17 miles. Relief washed over me. I followed the exit, tires crunching over snow-packed asphalt, visibility dropping to nothing. The road narrowed, then dipped. When the lights of the truck stop came into view, they looked wrong, too dim, like they were struggling to stay lit. But I didn't have a choice. The lot was half full. Every rig was idling, exhaust clouds hanging low in the freezing air. No cars. No buses. Just trucks, parked too close together, like they'd crowded in for warmth. I pulled into a spot and shut down. The wind died the second I opened my door. Not quiet. Gone. Snowflakes froze in place mid-fall, hanging in the air like dust. I stood there staring until my brain caught up and told me to move. Inside, the truck stop was warm but smelled old, like wet coats that never dried. A bell rang when I entered. Nobody looked up. Every person inside was a trucker. They sat at tables, staring into coffee cups that didn't steam. A TV played the Weather Channel on mute, looping the same forecast. I asked the cashier how long the storm would last. She smiled without showing teeth and said, "Long enough." Her name tag read Mary, but the letters were scratched through, rewritten again and again. I took a seat. The man across from me blinked too slowly. His eyes were bloodshot like he hadn't slept in weeks. I asked how long he'd been there. He frowned, thinking hard. "Since the snow forgot to move," he said. I laughed. Nobody else did. I went back outside to check my rig. My footprints ended halfway to the truck, swallowed by untouched snow. My trailer was gone. Just gone. No tracks. No damage. Nothing. Panic hit hard. I ran back inside, demanding to use the phone. The cashier shook her head slowly. "Phones don't work during white hours," she said. I asked what that meant. She leaned closer and whispered, "When the road disappears." That's when I noticed the windows. No snow. No parking lot. Just white. I stayed that night because there was nowhere else to go. Sleep came heavy and wrong. I dreamed of engines running without drivers, of trucks buried nose first in snowdrifts that never melted. Sometime before morning, I heard an engine start outside. Then another. Then another. One by one, trucks pulled away into the white. I rushed to the window. A driver waved at me as he passed. His face looked relieved. Peaceful. Too peaceful. By dawn, half the trucks were gone. So were the men who'd been sitting inside them. Mary wiped the counter clean and said, "They found their road." I stopped counting time after that. The TV kept looping the same forecast, severe weather advisory, but the clock above it never moved. I tried to mark hours by hunger, but the food never ran out and never tasted fresh. Coffee stayed warm without steam. Burgers never cooled. Nobody aged. The truckers spoke less each day, like words were something they were rationing. I noticed some of them had frost on their eyelashes even inside. One man sat by the window non-stop, staring into the white. When I asked what he was looking for, he said, "Tracks. If you see tracks, you still exist." I stopped going near the windows. Mary watched me more than the others. Anytime I moved toward the door, she'd appear nearby, wiping the same spotless counter. I asked her how long she'd worked there. She tilted her head, thinking. "Since the last thaw," she said. I asked when that was. She smiled again. I started checking people's boots. Some were soaked, snowmelt dripping onto the floor. Others were bone dry, cracked with age, like they hadn't touched real snow in years. Those were the quiet ones. The ones who never left. One of them caught me looking and shook his head slowly. "Don't unpack," he whispered. That night, my bunk felt colder. I woke to the sound of chains clanking. Outside, a snowplow sat in the lot. Rusted. Ancient. Its blade frozen into the ground. A man stood beside it, scraping ice off his hands like it was skin he could peel away. Mary stood with him. He tried to clear a path, she told me calmly. The man looked at me with eyes gone milky white. "There's no edge to it," he said. "The snow doesn't end." He climbed into a truck that wasn't his, didn't matter, and drove straight into the white. The plow sank slowly, like the ground swallowed it. Nobody reacted. That's when I understood. The truck stop wasn't shelter. It was a holding place. A pause between roads. Drivers who waited long enough forgot where they were going. Forgot why they drove at all. They stopped needing routes. Stopped needing exits. Mary finally told me the rule. "You either leave with your truck," she said, "or the road keeps you." I asked what happened to those who stayed too long. She looked around the room, at the cashier, the cook, the silent men. They helped the next ones rest. I packed immediately. I decided to leave before the truck stop noticed I'd made up my mind. The others who left had all done it suddenly. No goodbyes, no hesitation. I waited until Mary turned away, then stepped outside. The cold hit like a wall. Real cold. Painful. The snow was moving again, slow and steady, like nothing had ever been wrong. My truck sat exactly where I'd parked it. Trailer intact. Fresh tire tracks leading away from it. Mine. That alone nearly broke me. I climbed into the cab, hand shaking, and turned the key. The engine started on the first try. That felt wrong too. As I pulled forward, I checked the mirrors. The truck stop lights flickered. Just once. I swear I saw faces in the windows, drivers I'd eaten with, men who hadn't moved in days. Mary stood at the door, smiling gently, like a mother watching a child leave home. My tires rolled onto the road, and immediately the world snapped back into place. Wind howled. Snow whipped sideways. Radio crackled with real voices warning of whiteout conditions. Mile markers reappeared. My GPS rerouted like nothing strange had happened. Then I noticed the clock. 3 hours had passed. Not days. Not weeks. 3 hours. I reached the next city by morning. Police said no truck stop existed at that exit. Never had. Dot records showed the road had been straightened decades earlier after multiple weather-related disappearances. I didn't argue. I signed the paperwork and finished the delivery. Life moved on the way it always does. Too fast, too loud. But sometimes, when snow falls just right, I smell wet coats that never dry. I hear engines idling when everything is turned off. And once, months later, I saw a new truck stop sign appear ahead of me through the storm. Truck stop, 12 miles. I took the next exit instead. Here's the part 1 don't tell other drivers unless they really push me. The part 1 wish I didn't know. The road I escaped from? It still exists, but only when enough drivers need rest at the same time. When exhaustion stacks up. When storms erase direction. That truck stop isn't evil. It's necessary. Someone has to keep the lights on. Someone has to pour the coffee. Someone has to make sure the next tired driver doesn't freeze to death before they're ready to choose. Sometimes I wake up knowing exactly where it is. And I'm scared that one night, I won't take the exit. If this story gave you chills, don't scroll. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the road has more stories it doesn't want you to hear. Comment below. Would you stop at that truck stop? Or keep driving into the storm?